everything in between saying, I agree with this bill, and the two magic words at the end of her remarks, I object, I have to admit, brought me back to Saturday morning cartoons and watching Peanuts and the teacher going, wah, 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 because they were words, but they didn't mean anything.
So not only do I want to make sure that our service members don't miss a paycheck, I want to make sure that our service members don't miss out on any critical services they rely on every day. The senators should also understand that their focus and support of the military cannot end with those who are currently in uniform. And they should remember, 47% of Department of Defense civilians are veterans. And for that matter, 1 in every 4 employees across the entire federal government are veterans. We can't leave anyone behind. So I'll say it again for my colleagues who raise their voices here on the Senate floor, but have not cast their votes to prevent a shutdown. There are a lot of programs I care about, a lot of programs we all care about that would be hurt by a shutdown. But we are not going to solve this problem one by one, carve out by carve out. The best solution is to stop a shutdown in the first place. That is something we can do, and I bet we could do it a lot more quickly if the senators from Alaska and Texas would earnestly work with us. This isn't complicated. We've got a straightforward, bipartisan CR package that will avoid that shutdown, keep our military paid. So let's get our jobs done and get that passed. Thank you, Mr. President. I object.
Mr. President.
Objection is heard.
So my colleague,
Senator from Alaska.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm going to try and keep this short because the issues that we're debating here are not that complicated. I agree with my colleague from Washington State. We are working around the clock. We're in our conference right now trying to get an amendment to bolster border security that the whole country, by the way, wants. Democrats, Republicans, the whole country wants that. So we're working around the clock too, and my colleague did misstate something. I actually voted to get on this bill. I voted to get on this bill. So her statement about my vote, she needs to check my vote the other day. But be that as it may, once again, she says there's only one serious solution. Well, Mr. President, this body's done this before. The senator from Washington State has done this before. On the eve of a shutdown in 2013, the senator from Washington State voted for this bill. Every senator voted for this bill. So when she keeps saying, let's get real, I agree, let's get real. Go look at your vote from 2013. You voted for this on the eve of a shutdown. I'll remind my colleague from Washington State in 2019 when there was a partial government shutdown, focused on the Coast Guard, which wasn't getting paid, and the Democrats blocked my bill to pay the Coast Guard. She actually stated, quote, it's absolutely unacceptable that our Coast Guard families went without their paychecks during the shutdown. We need to make sure President Trump doesn't put them through this again. Well, I'm going to put my word, the senator from Washington State's words back at her. It is absolutely unacceptable that Coast Guard and other family members went without paychecks during the shutdown. We need to make sure it doesn't happen again, so vote for our bill. Every time they object, the arguments of why they're objecting to something they already agreed to 10 years ago get more tangled up. We're all working to avoid a shutdown, but if it doesn't happen, let's make sure the men and women who are risking their lives for our country and their families know that they're going to get paid. That's all we're asking. That's all we're asking. And everybody in this body 10 years ago did this, including the senator from Washington State. And it's just beyond comprehension that they're coming up with arguments now to not do this. This isn't about politics. This is about supporting our troops at the moment they really need it. And they're not doing that. I yield the floor to my colleague from Texas.
Mr. President.
Senator from Texas.
Mr. President, at the opening of her remarks, the senator from Washington said, I agree with the objective of this bill. I agree with what Senator Sullivan and Senator Cruz are trying to accomplish. Then she talked for a while, and then she blocked the entirety of the bill. Everything in between saying, I agree with this bill, and the two magic words at the end of her remarks, I object, I have to admit, brought me back to Saturday morning cartoons and watching Peanuts and the teacher going, wah, 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 because they were words, but they didn't mean anything. This is a binary choice. At 12:01 a.m. on Sunday, are soldiers going to get paid, yes or no? Are sailors going to get paid, yes or no? Are airmen going to get paid, yes or no? Are Marines going to get paid, yes or no? Are members of the Space Force going to get paid, yes or no? Are Coast Guardsmen going to get paid, yes or no? A decade ago, every member of this body voted to pay them. Since this debate began, the presiding officer had been Senator Kelly, has now been replaced by Senator Murphy from Connecticut. I would point out, Senator Murphy voted yes to pay our active duty military in 2013. And yet now the Democrats are blocking those paychecks. Senator from Washington said, well, gosh, the Democrats have a CR that you could have voted for. Senator from Washington knows fully well that the bill drafted by Democrat leadership is not going to pass the House of Representatives. She knows that. The result's going to be a shutdown. And what's changed from 2013 to now? From 2013 to now, the Democrat leadership is perfectly willing to hold a young man or woman in the military, to hold their paychecks hostage. Well, something interesting is going to happen at 12:01 a.m., 35 hours from now. Paychecks of every federal employee will stop. The paychecks of the stenographer who's recording my words will stop. The paychecks of the clerks sitting down front will stop. But you know what, Mr. President? There are 535 people whose paychecks will not stop. Under the Constitution, members of this body, senators, and members of the House, their paychecks can't stop even during a shutdown. Which means at 12:01 a.m. on Sunday, every Democrat senator will keep drawing their paycheck, while the people risking their lives to defend us will not. Well, I'll tell you, Mr. President, I have in writing instructed the Senate that I will not accept a paycheck so long as our active duty military is not being paid. It is wrong. Senators are paid $174,000 a year by law. The Democrat leadership who stands up and says, I object, is telling a 19-year-old woman in a nuclear sub right now defending our nation that her paycheck doesn't matter anymore. There's right now a mom in tennis shoes serving in the military who's discovering that her mortgage payment, she doesn't know how to pay. And so I'm going to suggest to the reporters who aren't here and aren't covering this, that so long as Democrat leadership keeps blocking what has been bipartisan and unanimous legislation previously, that every Democrat senator ought to be asked, are you taking a paycheck come 12:01 a.m. on Sunday? They're the ones objecting, they're the ones stopping, and every soldier needs to understand, why are you not being paid? Because the Democrats objected. Every sailor needs to understand, because the Democrats objected. Every airman, every Marine, every Coast Guardsman, every member of the Space Force. When your paycheck goes away 35 hours from now, it is because of two magic words the Democrat leadership has said. And let's be clear, it's not just the senator from Washington. She's doing it on an instruction from the Democrat leadership. They could change it like that. And I can tell you this, Senator Sullivan and I are going to keep coming back over and over and over again, because there's not a member of this body that wants to go home to your state. Even a state like Connecticut. You don't want to be at home looking at active duty military and saying, yep, my party took away your paycheck. That's too cynical even for this body. And so I pray that common sense comes back. I yield the floor.